Jay Sekulow is the chief counsel, American Center for Law and Justice, and member of the president's legal team. Good morning to you, Jay.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. What was your takeaway?
Well, look, I mean, Bob Mueller was trying to defend the indefensible. That report was incoherent as written, and it was worse as played out on live TV. I mean, it was a terrible, terrible waste of taxpayer money, in my view, on a whole host of levels. But I think yesterday kind of capsulized exactly what this is. The president has been under this, as he calls it, a witch hunt, and it was. Right. I mean, look what they were trying to find. And yet, when they put the architect, the person that's in charge of the investigation, the person that wrote the report, up on the stand, it was, I could quote every commentator from every other network, not ours here, but from every other network, and they said, disaster, train wreck, horrible. This is not what I'm sure they expected. And I'm a bit surprised, frankly, that, I mean, I know Nancy Pelosi was trying to put on a happy face yesterday with the press conference, but it was surprising to me that even members of the Democratic Party were last night recognizing that this was, as one commentator called it, a train wreck.
Well, it was clear, and we heard testimony, Jay, to the effect, essentially, the whole operation was staff-directed. And that brings up the question, you know, who exactly was pulling the strings on this thing? I mean, we saw Robert Mueller. He would go to work. He would sit behind the big walnut desk. At one point, we've got a little montage here. Here's Mr. Mueller being pressed on if he should have polled his prosecutors on their political views.
You hired a bunch of people that did not like the president. Let me ask you, when did you first learn of Peter Strzok's animus toward Donald Trump?
In the summer of 2017.
You didn't know before he was hired for your team?
Know what?
Peter Strzok hated Trump.
Are you aware that Ms. Jeannie Rhee represented Hillary Clinton in litigation regarding personal emails originating from Clinton's time as Secretary of State?
Yes.
Did you know that before she came on the team?
No.
So that kind of makes the point that the president has said they've got all these angry Democrats behind the scenes on the Mueller team.
So you have 12 or 13 prosecutors that twisted and turned and tried to do everything they could to come up with a collusion narrative, a conspiracy narrative, an obstruction narrative, and even with all their twisting and turning and convoluted legal theories, they couldn't do it. And then at the moment of truth, the question you knew that was going to be asked, Congressman Ted Lieu asked the question, and Bob Mueller gives an answer saying we didn't prosecute because of the LLC opinion, and then, of course, that contradicts his own report. He comes back in the afternoon and says, let me correct something. It was only, by the way, one of the biggest takeaways of the whole day. And he comes back, and what did he say? We did not make a determination on culpability. In other words, as they say in the report, we did not address the issue of the president's conduct as a crime. Not addressed. We didn't make that determination. In fact, they said difficult questions of law and fact are present here. So there's a whole host of reasons they did not move forward. The most of which is they had no case. Believe me, if this group had a case, does any one of you three disagree with me that if they had a case, they would have tried to bring it?
I know. And you got to read the first half of the report, the way the Russians are scrambling to get some type of hooks into the Trump campaign because he wins the election and they have no connections. And Putin's tasking some of his oligarchs to go find out who I can talk to. Hope Hicks talking about, I got a call from a Russian on my voicemail. I don't know who it is, but if it's Vladimir Putin, I don't want to blow him off. That's how confusing the collusion was, which was non-existent. Real quick.
Well, how about the fact that they, you know, he said, well, there wasn't a question of collusion. We didn't look at collusion. And then page 180 of his report, he says collusion is effectively conspiracy.
Jay,
I mean, that's in his report. And his team wrote it.
Well, he was seeing it for the first time. Jay, if you're known as a conservative attorney, right?
Yep.
So if someone had to investigate you, hire Jay Sekulow to investigate a Democratic president, you'd get huge pushback if you were assigned to that legal team. But Robert Mueller says it shouldn't matter in the legal. I never ask people their political affiliation.
Jay,
What's the truth?
Jay, they were giving money to Hillary Clinton's campaign and other Democratic campaigns.
So here's the irony of this: is Bob was trying, he says, right, to avoid even the appearance of bias or impropriety. and yet they don't ask that question. But let me take it another step further, and this is one that cannot be ignored. Peter Strzok's emails were bad enough. The text messaging, bad enough, right? Horrible. But yet Bob Mueller and his team allowed the phone that contained the information to be wiped clean.
Right.
In other words, destruction of evidence. That's what was going on here. So, you know what? It is time for the investigators to be investigated, and that's happening now. We're going to get to the bottom of this.
I get if you're investigating a crime that is not politically motivated or doesn't have to do with politics, that you're not going to ask your attorneys how they vote. But in this case, they're trying to figure out if the president was colluding with Russia. They know that, well, clearly he doesn't know what GPS is, Fusion GPS, but Fusion GPS used their money. They funded this. They track that back to Hillary Clinton. They track that back to the DNC. That money was used for the dossier that was written by Christopher Steele, and that was used to survey the president. The president's campaign. How did they not know where they stood politically?
Ainsley, well, they didn't know where they stood politically. How did he not know who Fusion GPS was? I mean, where are you living in a cave?
He didn't.
I mean,
he accidentally kind of answered that. He said, I'm not familiar with. Well, actually, that's not in the report.
Okay, well, but the Steele dossier is all over that report. But here's the most telling issue, I think. When he was asked about that exoneration nonsense, prosecutors do not exonerate. And he was asked, is there any historical precedent for the policy you put forward on exoneration? And Bob Mueller said there is not. And so the president's being treated differently than any other citizen in the context of a burden of proof that is upside down and contrary to our entire system of justice.
You know, after watching it for 6 hours yesterday, Jay, I think a lot of people were frustrated because Mr. Mueller did not provide a lot of answers. But we would still like to know about Fusion GPS and the Steele dossier and stuff like that.
Yeah, and they also, Steve, they try to discredit the answers that we provided to the questions that were submitted. But, you know, I will tell you this, in the correspondence that we had with the special counsel's office regarding those questions, they never raised an issue of untruthfulness in the responses, that they were not truthful. And he kind of intimated, although I don't think it was a direct answer to the question, but some of the networks ran off with that. And I really got on that last night and said, that's just not true. I have the evidence on that. And that's not what the correspondence shows at all.
So when you look at where we go from here, and you mentioned the text messages getting deleted, and Horowitz found a way to recover a lot of them, so we have some of it. How much do we know how much is still out there? Did Horowitz collect additions? Because there's reports over the last 2 days that they found additional texts, and they lead to Comey.
Yeah, so there's a whole series of issues with James Comey now, and that's James Comey and this agent that was planted inside the White House. That, I think, is going to be a huge issue. It's the guy named Ferrante. He was lent over by the FBI to the NSA in the White House. Wow. He was communicating with Comey. There's going to be, look, I think what Durham's going to do, the U.S. attorney that's been charged with this by Attorney General Barr, he's going to get to the bottom of this. I think the Horowitz report is going to be devastating. And you notice James Comey's silence for the last 3 or 4 days.
John Brennan's invisible.
To go back to what you said about
Clapper too.
To go back to what you said about Fusion GPS, how did he not know? How is he not familiar with that after we spent $25 million, basically 2 years of an investigation? What does that tell you?
He does not have a television. He does not have a newspaper.
I know.
Because it's been in it for
you know what it tells me? I'll tell you what it tells me, Ainsley. He wasn't running this investigation.
Right.
This was an investigation run by his deputies and his assistants.
Then why would they make him the lead guy? Why would
here's the real question you got to ask yourself. Why is it that when he asked a couple of days ago that in order for him to testify, he wanted Aaron Zibley, his deputy, to be next to him, and ultimately got sworn in the House. Why did he have to have that? Well,
now we know.
You saw why, exactly.
Right. Jay, is the president more apt to look to pardon some of those who paid the price for knowing him today than yesterday?
You know, I haven't had discussions with the president regarding who gets pardoned, who would not get pardoned. That's not in my purview. That would be in the purview, obviously, the president. Constitutionally, that rests with the presidents. But there's been no discussions, as far as I know, regarding those issues. But I will tell you something. There has been a lot of injustice here. I mean, some of this is just outrageous. I mean, like George Papadopoulos and goes to jail for 14 days. I mean, what is that, like an advanced traffic ticket in New York? I mean, this is some of the things that went on here. And look, the irregularities of this investigation from the outset are disastrous. But Jerry Nadler let Bob Mueller testify yesterday.
Right.
And after he asked to have Aaron Ziebli there, you would have thought he would have said, maybe this isn't such a good idea. But you know what I think they thought? I think they thought we, when I say we, the president, the Department of Justice, or somebody was going to try to block this. Nobody did. And there they were. They kind of got hoisted on their own petard there. And then them trying to come out and say, oh, we got great revelations. He said he didn't exonerate the president. Right. He can't exonerate a president. He can't exonerate you, Congressman Nadler, me, or anybody else. Congress, they don't get to do that. Exactly.
On to health care, Iran, North Korea, and immigration. Please, we need something to get done. Jay, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.